I think it starts really by actually understanding what your place of power is and what you enjoy doing most, and what is the maximum value you can bring to the world.
You're listening to the Marketing Study Lab podcast with me, Peter Sumpton, the Lego Master of Marketing, providing you the building blocks you need to be successful with your marketing. This intro lasts about a minute, so feel free to skip forward if you've heard it all before. It's nothing new. So what's this podcast all about? We chat to some amazing people to give you practical advice that you can implement right now that will make your marketing truly awesome. The conversations we have will lead you to the actionable marketing knowledge you've been craving. Just a quick word about supporting the show. The best way to do this is to leave a 5-star Apple Podcast review. It helps me get the best guests and helps others find the podcast. All I want to do is help people get the best out of their marketing. If you've got a burning marketing question right now, let's chat it through. All the links you need to contact me are in the show notes, because let's face it, you ain't writing anything down right now. Now let's get on with introducing our guest. It takes a long time to be known for your craft, and we shouldn't look for hacks, cheats, or quick fixes. We need to build it slowly and correctly. That is why it's an honour to welcome back to the podcast Mr. John Espirian, the relentlessly helpful copywriter. John's first appearance was way back in episode 32. Obviously the links are in the show notes, as usual. But now he has a new book out called Content DNA. Again, links in the show notes, as usual. This book is packed with ideas and helpful tips on how to get noticed, remembered, and preferred through being the same shape everywhere you show up. So in this episode, we focus on 3 chapters of his book. Chapter 5, being known for one thing and how we do this. Chapter 12, social media bad practice and what we should avoid doing. And chapter 23, writing and finding the right content ideas, and we can always do with some help in that area. But first, I need to know, this is probably one of the most random / not so random openers we've had on the podcast. John, can you explain what receptive bilingualism is?
Yes, it is when you can understand a language, but you can't speak it. Which
Okay.
seems very weird, but it does affect me, and I know other people it affects too. So I grew up in a household where Armenian was spoken, but I never got to learn it systematically. And then as I grew up in the UK, it kind of faded away, but I can still understand it if it's spoken to me. I just can't speak it back. So receptive bilingualism is the ability to understand a language, but not speak it.
Wow, learn something new every single day. And that is a truism of John Espirian, and it isn't something that's false. And if you want to know something that's false, check out his website.
Nice one.
Anyway, moving on to, because you're a two-timer on the podcast, don't really want to go back over what's brought you to this stage in your career. I want to have a focus on the present and the future. So what's 2020 looked like for you so far, and what's on the cards for the rest of the year?
Well, it's mostly been focused on getting my book finished and out into the world. I finished writing Content DNA at the end of 2019, and ever since then, I've just been managing the publication process of it. So getting the editing done, getting the typesetting done, proofreading, printing, and all sorts of stuff to get to where we are now, towards the middle of the year, where the book is actually a physical thing in people's hands. And also I've been managing the release of my first ever professionally designed website. So that's been a long time in the coming as well. So 2 really big projects that I finally got off my desk. And assuming that the coronavirus goes away sometime soon, then later in the year, I hope that I'll be able to do more in the way of in-person events, in-person training and speaking. I really want to get into that more because I think I know my subject matter quite well. And I'm kind of used to speaking now in
Mm.
public, and I just want to do more of that kind of stuff. It's more fun for me.
That's cool. Maybe get to a football game at some point, like maybe 2021.
Yeah, I can barely remember the rules of the game right now, to be honest. It just feels like it's just a lifetime ago that I last watched a live match. So yes, very much hoping that we can do that sometime soon.
If anyone from the FA is listening, John's just said that he can't remember many of the rules, so maybe you want to tap him up for being a referee. I don't know. It could be something on the
I could
cards.
be senior management, couldn't I?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, that's enough of FA bashing. Um, what I want to chat to you today about, John, is a few chapters from your book, and let's look at them specifically, because I think if we cover the whole book and what it entails, we'll be here all day, if not for 3 or 4 days, which I'd love to do, but we've both got families and other things that draw us away from our day jobs. God damn it! But that aside, um, why did you write the book first and foremost?
Okay, well, I wanted to help business owners to take better control over their personal branding and their content and their marketing, because a lot of people come to me as a copywriter and they ask for words that go on their website, and then I kind of stop them in their tracks and say, right, what is the DNA of your business? What are you all about? What is your shape, and what are we trying to achieve, and who are we trying to say it to? And often they just don't have a really clear idea of those things, or they've just
Mhm.
wasted a load of money doing some branding exercise, and then they end up with a PDF lost on a SharePoint drive somewhere because they never pay attention to it. So not all people are going to have a chance to work with me to do their copywriting. So I thought I'd just take the lessons that I've learned over the last 10 years of doing these consultations with business to business customers and just put them in one place. And yeah, so that's where the book came from. And also I stumbled upon my own brand identity kind of by accident. There's a story about this in the book about how I had this moment where I discovered the idea of being relentlessly helpful, and I just focused my whole personal brand around that idea, and it's had spectacular results for me. It's often echoed back to me, almost like the chorus of a song. And so I didn't want others to have to rely on that kind of luck to develop their own personal brand identity. So I kind of put in a framework for trying to do it yourself, and that's how the book has been birthed.
I think content DNA is bang on, particularly from your point of view with how you've grown and developed a business, I suppose, even though you're a one man band, simply because you are what you say you are, and you don't divert from that. Everything you do has those connotations in it.
Yeah, well, and I think that's a really, really important point. When people talk about what should my brand values be, and what should I even be doing with my business, it's got to come back to, you've got to do something that is true to you so that you can always do that thing, always be known for that one thing. And regardless of what situation you're in, coronavirus comes along and knocks everyone sideways. If you've got those foundational blocks of your brand in place, the things that will never change, always true, then you can just express that every time you show up in content and in the way you deal with your customers and in the way you run your business and in what the way the business is set up. So it's a really important thing to get right. And I often say to people, I claim to be relentlessly helpful. That's a massive claim. If you think about it, it's a
Yeah,
massive
yeah.
claim. And if I'm not, then you should call me out for it, because I'm a fraud. Essentially, I've just put some pretty words together and it doesn't mean anything. And I think you should be in a position where no one can ever call you out, because you are being faithful to whatever you've promised the world that you're going to be. So it's
Hmm.
a really, really important thing to get right.
Speaking of which, that brings us nicely into the first chapter that I want to discuss, and that's chapter 5.
Mhm.
be known for one thing, which we kind of alluded to right there. But going back a few steps, how do you actually do this? I know it might be difficult to answer that on an individual basis for anyone listening, but how do people do this? Where should they start with trying to understand what they need to be known for?
I think it starts really by actually understanding what your place of power is and what you enjoy doing most, and what is the maximum value you can bring to the world. So you might be able to bring a lot of value, but it might be something that just makes you miserable, or something that's actually not very valuable, but you absolutely love doing it. Well, that's not brilliant either, because you're probably not going to have a roof over your head. So there needs to be a balance struck between what is the maximum value you can provide while doing something that you enjoy, so that the confluence, the joining point of those two things is really what you want to aim for. But the important thing about being known for one thing is just it's far, far easier to remember a small bit of information. If you try and occupy a small memory slot in someone else's brain, that's much easier than getting them to remember that, oh, he does logo design, and he does
Mm,
websites, and he writes stuff, and he does podcasts as well, and I can't remember, I'm not sure what he's really good at, I don't know. Much easier to say he's that marketer that plays with Lego all the time, in your case. Or in my case, it might be he's that bloke that's on LinkedIn with his tips and his cartoons all the time. It's just being known for just a very small set of things, and so that comes from a bit of introspection. That's the thing. That's why I say it's very hard for me to be prescriptive to anyone I don't
mm,
know at all. But to understand what it is that you really like doing that provides value, and then boil it down into, if you could do only one thing, be known for only one thing, do that and be known in only one place as well.
mm,
It's a really important thing, because one of the big mistakes I've made in the past is trying to just have that kind of buffet approach to social media, little bit of Twitter, little bit of Facebook, little sprinkle of Instagram, and it doesn't work, because we're all busy people, right?
mm.
Unless we're going to spend our whole lives doing that, it's not going to work. So be known for one thing in one place. It's a much easier way to build credibility, build an addressable, meaningful audience. That's the way to go. So often I do consultations with people, and they say, I've got 3 businesses and I want to promote them all equally on LinkedIn. And I'm saying to them, probably that's not going to work, because no one's going to have enough attention to differentiate those things in their mind. So it's much easier to just focus on the thing that will give you the maximum income, the maximum joy at the same time, uh, and do that rather than trying to spread yourself too thinly.
Yeah, I completely and utterly agree. And I think at the start, it's fine to have that kind of approach and test these things. And I think you'll find what you love and what you don't like. And I think at some point you mentioned, is it a 30-month
Yeah.
focus? Is it?
Yeah, it's a 30-month mindset. So my marketing mentor is Mark Schaefer. He interviewed me for his book, Known, in 2017. And he interviewed actually almost 100 other people. About 70 people's testimonies got into that book in the
Hmm,
end. And he found that on average, it takes 2.5 years, which is 30 months, to become known for one thing in the
hmm,
industry of your choosing, whatever it is. If you're an artist, if you're you might be some kind of plumber, you might be a copywriter like me, you might make tailor-made men's suits, and so what that means is that there's no real overnight successes. You've got to keep going to the gym, basically, if you want to build the muscle,
hmm.
right? So if you're going to do something for that long, it's really got to be something that you believe in. It shouldn't be a chore. But you shouldn't do what a lot of people do. They'll say, oh, okay, I'm going to go and write some blog posts. And then after a couple of months, nothing very much happens. And you go, well, that didn't work. Marketing doesn't work. Ah, I've proved it. I'm going to quit now and be poor for the rest of my life. So, and it's the same with podcasting. Oh, I'm going to start a podcast, and I've done 10 episodes, and not many people are listening. Podcasting doesn't work. Yeah, but if you think about it, the ones who are getting all the success, they've done 200 episodes.
Hmm.
You know, they've done the hard yards. And all you're seeing, maybe, if you look at them, is, oh, look how successful they are, and everyone shares their stuff, and they've got loads of followers. And yeah, but look at all that stuff they had to do to get to that point. And it's just the same all the way over. Whether you've got a YouTube channel, whether you're writing a blog, doing a podcast, anything, you just got to do it for long enough for people to start noticing. And this is exactly what I had on LinkedIn. You know, I I went deep on LinkedIn in 2017 and nothing happened for months. Nothing. I mean, literally, I didn't get a single client from it for like 9 months. But I knew that it would work because I'd studied content marketing and because I'd seen all of these case studies of people who'd just been committed to one platform that they knew would work for them eventually. And lo and behold, now people do know me on LinkedIn. I do get business. So that's one of my two main things in the book is just to have that consistency. Once you've made a decision and picked your spot, you've got to keep turning up and just have faith that it will work for you, and don't quit too early, because you never know when you're about to strike gold.
Mm. It's really interesting that you mention Mark Schaefer, because I think in his latest book, I think it's his latest book, he mentions Joe Wicks.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Joe Wicks has made a big impression on the UK, if not the world, over the past 3 or 4 months with
Mm.
his PE sessions in the morning. And hats off to him. He gives all the money to charity and all that kind of stuff. And people, I hear people dismissing him or whatever it might be, but like the way he grew up, the way he built his business, he used to stand outside a tube station in the morning, handing out leaflets to say, "Come and join me in a park and do some exercise." And sometimes he had 0 people turning up.
Yeah.
And people look at him now. It's like, "Oh, it's all right for you. You've got a book deal. You've got this. You've got
Yeah.
that." And it's like you don't see the build up to that. There's always a build up. There's not an overnight success, like you say.
Yeah, I mean, Justin Bieber started by playing guitar on YouTube and hoped that he'd get a few followers. And whatever you think of him, he did the hard yards, didn't he? And now
Yeah.
he's got a massive following. And it's just the same for every single person. There are very, very few true overnight successes. And if you're looking at social media and thinking that everyone is like that, everyone is massively successful, and it just happened in a flash for them, you're fooling yourself. You've got to do a lot of hard work for this stuff to work.
Absolutely, and I think that brings us nicely on to another chapter jumping forward. That's chapter
Mhm.
12. So this is social media bad practices. So
Mm.
we're saying we need to be known for one thing and really focus and get deep and enjoy it and embrace it. It's got to be part of you, really.
Yeah.
But what should we avoid when it comes to social media, and what are we seeing that is just terrible?
Well, I'm going to try and focus this on LinkedIn, because that's
Sure.
definitely my place of power. And there's just so many bad things on LinkedIn. So I think one of the worst things is sending generic invitations. If you want to try and network with people, then you should try and make an effort to get to know them, and just
Mm,
essentially dropping a business card in their hand and wandering off, and then waiting for them to go and look you up and decide whether they ought to do business with you or add you to their network. I think that's the starting point of bad practice. I think any marketing practice that you wouldn't do in person is bad practice, pretty
mm.
much. So if you don't talk to people, that's bad practice. So if you try to do the same thing online, I think it's terrible. And God, where can we go with LinkedIn? I mean, engagement pods, for example, terrible practice. So in other words, you get together in what I call an unholy alliance of a chat group, where you say, you post something terrible and I'll go and like and comment and share on it. And then I post something terrible and you go and do the same to me. And we just fool the algorithms into thinking that people like this stuff. Well, that's just low value content, isn't it? That's not the way to be seen. It's not a good idea. So that's another bad practice. Another one is just trying to build a network way too quickly. So, because what that means is that you go and try and connect with 100 people a day, 200 people a day. You don't have a chance to speak with them, and everyone becomes a number to you. That's not the way to build an engaged network.
Mm.
A lot of people ask me, like, God, you get a lot of likes and comments on your content. How can I do that? Well, one of the things is obviously to create something interesting in the first place, and I can't just wave a magic wand and make your content great, but just engage with people properly is the right thing. So don't ignore comments, don't ignore direct messages, foster some kind of discussion. You're building a campfire, aren't you? You want people to come and be comfortable and warm there. And so if they leave you a comment, you should reply. And you should try and get into conversations with those people. So it means building your network slowly. I'd rather
Mm.
make 2 or 3 good connections in a day than go and connect with 200 people, because those 200 people won't give a damn about me if something goes wrong in my business or if I've got a challenge that I want to share, because they don't know me. I'm just a number to them. But if I actually start to chat with people, read their profile, understand what they like, maybe they like football and we bond over football and we have a chat about that. It's just that whole idea of just talking to people before leaping into business. And that's another one of the bad practices is you connect with someone and then bang, you're on their mailing list. How the hell did that happen? Or they're selling something to you. They're telling you that they've got the fix to your problem and they don't know you from Adam. People talk to me about, we've got something that will help your organization. And I'm thinking, well, you couldn't have read my profile because you'd know that I was a one-person business.
Mm.
So what the hell? So there's just way too much of that, I think, well, another practice that used to be common, I don't think it's as common these days, and especially not on LinkedIn, is that old way of building the network by following people so that they would follow you back. And then you kind of secretly unfollow them so that it shows as though you're not following many people, therefore you're important, and yet you're building more followers. And there was automated software that would let you actually build your network this way, which I think is absolutely horrendous. So just all sorts of crappy practice that you would just never do if you were face to face with a person. Just always think of that first. If I were face to face with them, would I do this thing in the real world? And you probably wouldn't, would you? So try
Yeah.
not to do it online either.
Absolutely. While you've been talking there, just a few things, how my mind works a bit crazy, but a few things kind of popped into it. And the first one was I always say to people, when you are connecting with people, let's stick with LinkedIn. If you go to an event, you don't go up to people and say, "Hi, my name's John. Please buy my stuff." It's like, so why are you doing this? Why are you doing it digitally? The second thing is that I'm currently getting a lot of emails that say, "Listen to your podcast and it's amazing. Do you want to try this free software that will get you such and such?" And I'm like, you haven't listened to it, have you? Come on, let's be honest.
Yeah.
It's not amazing. No, and then the other two things with pods. The first thing that sprung to my mind was Star Wars and the dark side of the Force, and we
Okay.
all know how that ended up,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's right.
it's yeah.
I mean, you just mentioned podcast there, and I've written an article about this because, some people say, "Oh, how do you get on podcasts?" And the answer is always just kind of be human in your approach to the host. Like a podcast host doesn't always get feedback about how well their show is doing because
Mm.
podcasts aren't really set up like that. So maybe you go and rate and review their stuff. Maybe you contact the host and say, "I listened to episode 3 and I really loved it, and you covered blah blah blah, and I thought that was fantastic." Or I know that guest that you've spoken to. Just doing just human things like that. Just help the other person, show that you've got some interest, real interest, rather than sending them some cut and paste thing that you've also sent to 50 other podcast hosts saying, "I would very much like to be a guest on your show. Here is the value that I can provide." Blah, 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 massive wall of text. These are just not human ways of doing business. And I just can't stand them. And I've got one other really, really bad social media practice,
Yeah.
which is really prevalent on LinkedIn, is the good old tag wall. So you get a notification, Barry's tagged you in this post. Oh, right. Okay. Let's see what Barry's up to. And then you see this wall of blue in front of you, and you've got to play guess, spot the tag.
Mm.
Like, I know I'm in here somewhere. There's 100 other names in here. What the hell's going on? And what's happening, of course, is they're just using you for engagement. They're using you as a signal. You're being pointed to the post, and they want you to engage somehow. And they don't care about you because they wouldn't have tagged all of those people otherwise. So I don't want to be a brick in someone else's tag wall. And I get this happening about 5 or 6 times a day now. It's
Wow.
really, really annoying. And so I'm just starting to ignore it. And there is a little bit of evidence to suggest that if people start ignoring your tags, so if you do go off and run off and tag people all over the place, and they go, what the hell's he doing? I'm not gonna respond to this. But that could damage you as the person doing all of the tagging, because LinkedIn will say, he's not getting much response to this.
Mm.
Maybe not a good idea to promote his stuff through the network. So just be aware, because I think the social media algorithms, this is true on other platforms as well as on LinkedIn, they're becoming more aware of what bad practice is. And if they tweak their algorithm, in such a way to counter that, then doing bad things isn't going to work. So just try and do things the ethical way, I think. And it's just douche canoe practice, isn't it? Don't do
Hey, there we go. um, I was listening to somebody and they said, I just thought it was brilliant just how they flippantly said it. And they were talking about SEO and previous practices that used to work
that.
in like Google rankings. And they said something along the lines of, when Google used to be stupid, you could do this, this, and this. And it was just the fact that, yeah, that they're not stupid and the other platforms aren't stupid either.
No, that's right. Yeah, you could do things like keyword stuffing.
Hmm.
So you just put all your keywords in the metadata at the top of a post, and it would rank well, because it you know. But yeah, Google and other platforms are just far too clever for that now.
Hmm.
So, but if you do things the right way, if you provide something that is of value, then your content. I mean, I'm talking more generally about blogging here. If it's of value, then people stick around and read it for ages, and you have this long dwell time. People click into a post and they might sit there for 5 minutes consuming it all because it's so good. It's
Mm.
not spammy and salesy and full of ads and all that. And that's a really strong signal to the search engine. So just focus on providing as much value as you can. That's the core of the kind of business that I run anyway.
Again, it's going back to the same things, isn't it? Being relevant, sticking to what you know, writing good content, helping people out, etc.,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah.
And this leads me nicely on to the final chapter that I want to talk about today, which is chapter 23, what
Mhm.
to write about and how to find content ideas. And I must admit that I'd say very recently I've taken a back seat in LinkedIn simply because, like, I haven't felt I've got anything good to write about, and
Mm.
finding content ideas, sometimes you can hit a block. So what should we be writing about in our own fields from
Yeah.
that one thing we want to be known about, and how do we find ideas?
Well, if you've got no ideas whatsoever, the first thing I would recommend is that you inspect your email inbox, because if you've got any kind of business that's been running for a while, chances are you will have received questions and you will have answered them one to one, and it will have taken you a while to do so, because it's quite draining to sit there and answer question after question. But all business owners do it. And so, actually, what you ought to do is look at all of the questions you've received and prepare really, really good answers that can be shown to people at scale. So, obviously, you wouldn't have anything sensitive in there. But if you can answer a question at scale, that means that the next person who comes along, you can go, oh yeah, I've written about that, or they've Googled the question and they've found your answer. And that sends a really strong signal to that person. It says, yeah, this guy knows what he's talking about. He's already answered this. And, it's kind of a trust factor, isn't it? Because if he's already answered this and he's already answered that, and he's answering all of my questions, maybe I should just hire him now or buy his product or whatever it is. It's a really powerful thing to do, rather than having a load of one-to-one conversations that never get aired, and therefore people don't understand what your expertise is. So inspect your email inbox. Think about all of the possible customer objections you might have. So what are the things that would stop people hiring you or buying your product? Think carefully about them. You might need to ask friend or family member about that, whatever it is you're in. Why wouldn't someone buy this?
Mm.
So if you can create content that truthfully answers those objections, that will again also build a lot of trust with your audience. And this doesn't mean that you should try and make things shiny and wonderful and rainbows and unicorns, because people don't really buy that. And there is a bit in the book where I quote some research that says that actually the best star ratings on Amazon and other places, it is not a perfect 5.0. It's actually between 4.2 and 4.5. So in other words, if people can see that something's not quite perfect, and if you can lead with flaws, tell people why your service isn't perfect, which is a big mindset thing for people to try and get their heads around. Should I really do that? It just leads to so much trust. So for example, if you're the kind of person where the client really wants an in-person interview with the service provider, but you actually don't do that. Even not in Corona time, you just say, actually, I deal with people only on Zoom or Skype. That is a drawback for some people. But if you just put that out there, at least people know, look, he's
Mm.
talking about the limitations. That's okay. Or he only serves this area. All right, well, at least he was honest about it. He didn't waste half an hour on the phone with me, and then he finds out that he doesn't deliver to my area. Just put those flaws, be clear about those things, because people will appreciate it, and it can help you build more trust with the people who actually are interested in buying from you. And then do the classics of content marketing. Talk about the questions that people really have. So people always want to know about price. People always want to know, what's actually going to go wrong if I buy this thing, or if I sign up to this membership or whatever. Talk about those potential problems. Do things like industry comparisons of different services. So, you might be you might be an expert in a field where you can talk about, I don't know, it might be one kind of swimming pool versus another kind. I've no idea, but I'd like to see someone who actually knows that go, oh yeah, actually you'd be better with this kind than that kind, and here's why. Here are the pros and cons. Um, and on top of that, all of that, I always say that if you want to create whatever kind of content you create, should always be in service of your content DNA. But it'll be a while. It might take a while to discover what those branding blocks are for you. So in the meantime, create something that is like that falls into a safety net that I've come up with, which I call CHAIR, and it's an acronym, and marketers love acronyms, don't they?
Yeah, we do.
So yeah, so CHAIR stands for challenging, helpful, amusing, interesting, and relevant. If you create content that hits a couple of those high level things, so something that will divide opinion, that will help someone, that will make someone smile, and that will interest them, and above all is relevant to your industry. You don't want to do things that are totally irrelevant. That's the kind of stuff that will get engagement, and
Mm.
that's the best thing you should be after on social media, because engagement gets you eyeballs, and eyeballs get you, they get you more interesting and relevant connections, a proportion of whom will ultimately do business with you. And another thing you can create content around is your sales process. Try and put as much of that out there as possible. So what is it actually like to hire me? What happens? Like when we have our first telephone call, how long is that going to be? What happens when we discuss things? Do we move straight on to signing a non-disclosure agreement? Is there a follow-up call? Do I have to fill in some documents? What's going to
Mm.
happen? Because if you put all of that out, it just again knocks down barriers, and people go, oh, I know what to expect. And even better if you can do it on video. I know that's a bugbear for some people, because they feel, I'm not confident, I'm too fat, I haven't got makeup on, or whatever. It's all too much effort, I haven't got the right lighting. But if you can just get yourself on camera just even a little bit, it really makes a big difference, because people will buy from, the authentic person they see. And if they see someone explaining how their product or service works, the real person they're actually going to contact and buy from, I think that's just massively powerful. So I've tried to, with my new website, I've tried to put myself on camera, on the page as much as possible, so that
Mm.
you're not getting an agency that's going to outsource things to another continent. You're getting me, one bloke in South Wales who will write your stuff for you. That's it for all my flaws. That is what you're going to get. So I might as well just tell you it's me.
Yeah. I love that. It sounds so simple as well, but very difficult to master. And I think that the tips that you just said then about creating content and generating ideas, all that was running through my mind was the fact that everything you're saying there is to give people information and to make that journey from, first of all, finding you to then working with you frictionless and as
Yeah.
easy as possible to jump from one stage to the next.
Yes,
And
and yeah, the thing that you said about stages as well, that's really important, because you need content that services every part of the life cycle of your business, right? So
mhm.
I give an example in the book about someone who's struggling because they can't stream their Netflix in their bedroom, and that's the problem that they'd be googling. It's not Netflix is not working. Netflix is the problem. But actually, the problem is that your home broadband isn't working properly, and people just don't understand that it's nothing to do with Netflix.
Mm,
Netflix is fine. Your neighbour's having a whale of a time. But it's your broadband that's flaky. And so, actually, when you dig deeper and find out that it is the broadband, you need something that's maybe a bit more technical about showing you how you fix that.
mm.
But your content might start with having trouble streaming your Netflix. And it might end with, here is the right router configuration that you actually need to buy. And you never would have searched for that to start with. But the educated person who's done their due diligence might be searching for that. The person who is barely aware that they've got a problem is searching for something else. So you need to think, and you've got no way of predicting what state of mind your potential customer is going to
Mm.
be in. Are they that early stage, or is it that really late stage where they're just picking a product and they actually want to know how much it costs and where can I order it? So you need content for all of those things, and that's potentially a really long cycle. And there's loads of content ideas in there. So I guess that comes back to understanding what the process is, what mindset people are in at each stage, and then thinking, right, what would help them at this stage, what would help them at that stage, and however many other stages, what can we create that will do those things. And I tell you what, if you've done all of that and then you've run out of ideas, fair enough. But you've probably got loads of business by then, because you just
Yeah, yeah.
answered every damn question out there, and the people are lining up to work with you.
Yeah, you've already bought your velvet cape and golden crown, and
Yeah,
you're pretty happy with life by
yeah,
then.
yeah.
Excellent, great stuff. So what I want to do now is move on to some quick fire questions because you've provided so many actionable tips. I want to put you under a
Okay.
bit of pressure now, if that's all right.
Fantastic. All right, let's do it.
Cool. What's that source of information you can't live without?
God, well, Google. I mean, I just use it so many times a day. It's just a part of the fabric of life, isn't it?
Yeah.
Couldn't live without it. Although, also, even though LinkedIn is my main place, I actually get my news from Twitter.
Yeah.
I can just fire up Twitter and just see what's trending,
hmm
and that's just a really good news source for me. So I actually use Twitter for news, and that's pretty much indispensable for that reason.
Although in the past 3 to 4 months, what seems to be happening on Twitter, especially in what's trending, if it's the name of somebody that's recognizable, the first thing that probably the 50 tweets after that are like, oh, thank God they're not dead. And
Yeah,
it's just
exactly,
like, what?
exactly.
What
And
is going on with the world?
it's
It's
yeah, it's the Denzel Washington gif of someone just breathing out and saying, "Oh yes, so and so is still alive." Yes,
Yeah,
I
absolutely,
know.
and
It's
I
true.
again, I suppose it links to a sad state of affairs, which we won't go into about that. We put celebrities on a pedestal in a
Yes.
way that
Yeah.
we really care about people we've never met. Anyway,
Yeah.
that's
True.
another story.
True.
Complete this sentence. The hardest thing about writing a book is
Hardest thing I've found about writing a book is getting the structure right early on, and that's the big mistake that I made with writing my book. What I actually did was gather loads and loads and loads of notes, and then I tried to retrofit it into a structure that you might see in a typical book, chapters, a logical progression. What would have been better would have been spending some hard thinking time at the beginning and just writing the 32 chapters that I ended up writing just listing those and then saying, right, I'm going to write these chapters. I might not write them all in order, but these are the ones I'm going to do, rather than having this massive pile of notes of all different sorts of things and then trying to work out what goes together. And that made it take a long time. And the other thing, if I can mention one more thing, was just
Mm.
managing the publication process, because even though I've got an editorial background, just managing an editor, managing a proofreader, and managing a typesetter, and a book designer, and an ebook creator, and an audiobook producer, and a publishing house to get the thing on Amazon, all of that stuff is just admin,
Mm.
and I'm not really that hot on admin, or at least it doesn't inspire me. So it was a real chore to get through that stage. I wanted to just do the writing, really, but hey. So yeah, that was tough, and it's tougher than I think a lot of people give it credit for. So if you're thinking about writing a book, just get ready, structure your stuff, and then assemble the right team who are going to help you publish it, and hopefully you'll have fewer problems than I did.
And just going back to what we were saying before about content ideas, I find that is really helpful to structure a long form piece of content. Is bullet point the key points and then build it from there. Pretty much like you said about the chapters.
Yeah, because it's all about chunking then, instead
Mm.
of having this blank page and going, oh God, I've got to write 1,000 words here. If you chunk it into, right, I need to write a headline, I need to write an opening paragraph, I need to cover 3 points maybe and have a conclusion. Well, that already has just broken it up, and it's
Mm.
much less scary. And it's just much easier to do it that way. Just, you just eat it one chunk at a time rather than trying to swallow the whole thing in one go.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, so if you could tell your 10-year-old self one thing, what would it be?
I would say think carefully about what it is that you really want to do, and then get ready to write a lot of stuff about it. Because this thing called the internet is going to come along, because 10-year-old me would have been in 1987. And that wasn't a thing back then, not really. Anyway, certainly not in the household. But I would have said, yeah, get ready to write a lot of stuff, because this thing is going to come out and it will let you share your message with everyone in the world, and that's going to be really, really powerful. So knowing what you want to do and then talking about it as much as you possibly can is the best thing to do, I think.
You've just blown a lot of people's minds there by saying this thing wasn't around. Like, what do you mean? There was one point
I
in
know,
history that the
I know,
internet didn't exist. What did you do?
I know. It's mental, isn't it?
Yeah, it is crazy. Uh, what's the most important thing to know in marketing right now?
I think the most important thing is still what it's always been, which is that helping beats selling. I think it's a really, really important thing to do, to try and create stuff that will add value to people rather than just trying to force a sales message down their throat. And I think actually now more than ever, when everyone's in lockdown and everyone's feeling a bit unsure and a bit unsteady about themselves and not knowing what the future is going to be like, now is the time to try and find ways where your business can maybe pivot a little bit and just think about, what could I do to help people today, rather than how am I going to sell my stuff? Because when the green shoots of recovery come, people will remember what you
Hmm.
did. They'll remember the values that you've put out into the world, and that will come back to support you in the future. And it's been the core of my business. I just take sales out of my process as much as possible and just focus on what can I do to help this person right now. Yeah, so that for me, that's the core of marketing, is educating your customers and just finding ways to help them as much as possible.
Brilliant. So, final and most important question. If people want to find out more about you,
Yeah.
get the book, listen to the audiobook, where should they go?
Okay, well, I've got a very unusual surname, so I always tell people to look me up on LinkedIn. If you can spell my name properly, then you'll be able to find me on Google as well. So my new website has just been launched, so espirian.co.uk. You can get my book through there, and it's now, just as of the other day, it's been released as an audiobook, so you can get paperback, ebook, and audiobook of Content DNA. And if you want to have a chat, and I'm always up for a chat, then look me up on LinkedIn, and please send me a personalized invitation and say, you heard me on Peter's podcast, you'd like to be in touch. And that's all I need, and we can have a nice chat then.
Love it. John Espirian, thank you so much for joining me today. I want to end on one word, which is a complete in-joke and no one will ever get it. Wibble.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Okay, I hope the Blackadder fans will enjoy that one.
Once again, John, thank you so much for turning up and being relentlessly helpful on this episode. It is much appreciated. And here are my takeaways from my chat with John. And the first thing is that you need to find that one thing you want to be known for. Got it? No? Well, follow John's steps to get there. What do you enjoy doing the most? And what brings the most value to other people? Finding one without the other just doesn't work, or it's going to make you miserable. So it's worth taking the time to work this bad boy out. My second takeaway is the bad practices that John sees on LinkedIn. The things we should avoid are engagement pods, generic invites, ignoring people. Make sure you engage. The follow, unfollow, and finally tag walls. No one wants to be a brick in a wall, do they? And finally, don't have a 1-month plan or even a 12-month plan. Focus on 30 months. That gives you the time to build up a reputation, or as Mark Schaefer puts it, being known. This can seem daunting at times because it is quite a long time to focus on. But it'll pay off as there's no shortcuts here. So rewind, listen to John's wide words, and then go implement. I'll see you in 30 months. Or next week on next week's episode. Don't miss that one. Thank you so much for joining us today on Marketing Study Lab. It really means the world that you're listening to this out there. And hopefully I've provided you some value. If you're looking to know more about what Marketing Study Lab does and is about, go to marketingstudylab.co.uk or get in touch with me personally, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or feel free to email me at peter@marketingstudylab.co.uk. Happy marketing.